If you were a kid in America in the 1970s, you probably knew this moment. You came home from school hungry, but supper was not ready yet. So you opened the cabinet and looked for anything that could count as a snack. Saltines, peanut butter, white bread, a half bag of chips, a box of Pop-Tarts, a packet of Kool-Aid, maybe one little can of pudding with a pull tab on top. The 1970s were not an easy decade for the grocery bill. Food prices jumped, gas prices jumped, and a lot of parents had to make ordinary food go further. That is where these snacks lived. They were not fancy. Most of them were not planned. They were made from whatever was already in the pantry, and somehow that made them taste even more like home. Some of these snacks were older than the 1970s. Some were new supermarket conveniences. But together, they tell the story of how American families fed hungry kids between meals when money mattered and nothing useful was supposed to go to waste. Number 4 came in a pull-tab can that kids still remember opening. Number 6 started as a cheap powdered drink envelope and turned into summer ice. And number 1 entered American grocery stores in the early 1970s, then became budget food for generations. These are 25 forgotten poor man's snacks from the 1970s that still taste like home. Number 25. Bread, butter and sugar sandwich. This was barely a recipe. 2 slices of soft white bread, a smear of butter or margarine, a sprinkle of white sugar. Press the bread together, cut it if someone was feeling civilized, and eat it before the sugar started falling out. The bread, butter and sugar sandwich belonged to a long family of frugal, sweet snacks. Food writers and memory collectors have found versions of sugar bread across the American South and beyond, usually made from whatever was already in the kitchen. It was not candy, but it worked like candy when candy was not in the house. The magic was texture. Soft bread, cool butter, and a tiny crunch from the sugar. It was sweet enough to feel like a treat, plain enough that a parent could pretend it was not dessert, and cheap enough that nobody had to make a grocery trip. Number 24. Cinnamon sugar toast. Cinnamon sugar toast was the dressed-up version. Bread went into the toaster, butter melted into the surface, then came a spoonful of cinnamon sugar, sometimes from a little jar that lived near the stove. If the toast was hot enough, the sugar turned slightly glossy and the cinnamon smell reached the next room. This snack felt bigger than its ingredients. Bread, butter, sugar, cinnamon. That was all. But it made a kitchen smell like someone had baked something, even when nobody had. It was breakfast, after-school snack, late-night bite, and poor man pastry all at once. For 1970s kids, cinnamon toast also had a kind of independence to it. It was one of the first snacks a child could make alone if they were trusted with the toaster. A little uneven butter, too much sugar in one corner, burnt edge on one side. That was part of the charm. Number 23. Buttered saltines. Buttered saltines were what happened when the snack shelf looked empty, but the cracker box was still there. Saltines have deep roots in American food. Crackers were cheap, dry, useful, and easy to keep around. Buttered saltines turned that plainness into something just rich enough to satisfy. One cracker, a thin swipe of butter or margarine, maybe another cracker pressed on top, like the smallest sandwich in the world. Some families ate them with soup. Some ate them with milk. Some ate them standing in the kitchen, one after another, because the salt and fat made the next cracker seem necessary. This was not a snack that advertised itself. It did not have a mascot. It did not come in neon packaging.
It came from the shelf where parents kept things that lasted. That is why it survived in memory. A buttered saltine was humble, but it knew exactly what it was doing. Number 22. Crackers with American cheese. There were families where this was the official after-school plate. Saltines, margarine, and a small square of American cheese.
One food memory archive even preserves a 1970s family version from the Chicago suburbs. Saltine crackers topped with a little margarine and a piece of Kraft American cheese. The details will vary from house to house, but the idea is instantly recognizable. It was a cold grilled cheese broken down into pantry parts. Cracker for crunch, margarine for richness, American cheese for salt and color. No stove, no pan, no cleanup beyond a knife and a plate. For kids, it felt like making tiny hors d'oeuvres without knowing that word. For parents, it was cheap, fast, and safe. And if the cheese was one of those individually wrapped slices, opening the plastic was part of the ritual. It was not fancy food, but on the right afternoon, it disappeared fast.
Number 21. Peanut butter crackers. Peanut butter crackers were a masterpiece of American thrift. Peanut butter had already become a major American food long before the 1970s. It was valued as an economical source of protein, and by the mid-20th century it was everywhere: sandwiches, cookies, lunchboxes, crackers, and quick snacks. Spread it on a cracker, and it became portable. 2 crackers pressed together, and it became a sandwich. Add a glass of milk, and it started to feel like enough. This snack worked because peanut butter was sticky in all the right ways. It held the crackers together, filled the mouth, and made a little snack feel more substantial than it really was. It was also one of those snacks kids could assemble with a butter knife and a little patience. Per man food often comes down to this: take the plain thing, add the filling thing, and call it good. Before we move on, notice the pattern. These early snacks are not really about recipes. They are about permission. A kid could make them. A tired parent could approve them. The ingredients were already in the kitchen. Nobody had to heat the oven or dirty a skillet. In a decade when food prices could feel unpredictable, the best snack was often the one that did not require asking for anything new. Number 20. Apple slices with peanut butter. Apple slices with peanut butter were the snack that let everyone feel responsible. It had fruit, so parents liked it. It had peanut butter, so kids liked it. It was sweet, salty, crunchy, creamy, and filling enough to keep someone out of the cookie jar for at least a little while. This snack also belonged to the era of practical home nutrition. Peanut butter was inexpensive and familiar. Apples were common. Put them together and the result felt healthier than most sweet snacks, but not so healthy that a kid felt cheated. Some families cut the apple into wedges. Some sliced it into thin rounds. Some left the peanut butter in a bowl for dipping, and some smeared it right on each piece. The best version had a little peanut butter ridge thick enough to leave teeth marks. It is still around, of course. But the 1970s version tasted like a parent trying to be economical and sensible at the same time. Number 19. Ants on a log. Ants on a log had a name that made vegetables negotiable. Celery was the log. Peanut butter filled the groove. Raisins were the ants. That was the whole trick. PBS and extension programs still teach versions of it because it remains simple, kid-friendly, and easy to assemble. But for a 1970s child, ants on a log could feel like a craft project that happened to be edible. The raisins had to line up. The peanut butter had to be spread without snapping the celery. And if someone used chocolate chips instead of raisins, the snack became wildly luxurious. It was also a parent victory. Celery made it crunchy, peanut butter made it filling, and raisins made it sweet enough to pass inspection. Not every kid loved celery. Plenty of them ate the peanut butter and raisins first and left the log behind. But the snack still earned its place because it made thrift playful. Number 18. Graham crackers and milk. Graham crackers started as a 19th century health food, but by the time many Americans remember them, they were childhood food. They came in rectangles, broke on the dotted lines, and tasted like honey, wheat, and the quiet part of the cupboard. A stack of graham crackers with a glass of milk was a snack. Crumble them into a bowl and pour milk over them, and they became almost cereal. Let them sit too long, and they collapsed into a sweet, soft mess. That was the pleasure. The cracker changed as you ate it. Graham crackers were not flashy. They were not the snack a kid bragged about at school. But they were steady. They worked after school, before bed, on sick days, or when there was nothing else sweet enough in the house. Some snacks are remembered because they were exciting. Graham crackers and milk are remembered because they were always there. Number 17. Cornbread and milk. In parts of the South and Appalachia, leftover cornbread did not go to waste. It went into a glass or a bowl with milk or buttermilk. Some people called it crumblin'. The cornbread softened, the milk thickened, and the whole thing became a spoon snack that could stand in for supper if the day had gone that way. Food historians often treat cornbread and milk as a Southern tradition with farm and home roots. Its exact origin is hard to pin down, which is normal for food that comes from leftovers. Nobody invents a thing like this in a boardroom. It happens because there is cornbread on the counter and milk in the house. For outsiders, it can sound strange. For people who grew up with it, it can be one of the deepest tastes of home: cold milk, crumbly bread, a little salt, and the feeling that nothing useful was ever thrown away. Number 16. Tomato sandwich. A tomato sandwich is proof that poor man food can be perfect. Soft white bread. Mayonnaise. A thick slice of ripe tomato. Salt. Pepper. That is it. In the South especially, the tomato sandwich became one of those seasonal foods that people defend with real emotion. Tomato and mayonnaise sandwiches were already part of early 20th century American sandwich culture, and modern Southern recipes still insist on soft bread, good mayo, and a tomato worth eating. No lettuce. No bacon. No cheese. Not unless you are making something else. For a 1970s family with a backyard garden, this was cheap because the tomato might have come from outside. The bread and mayo did the rest. It was messy, juicy, and impossible to eat politely. The tomato sandwich was not a sad snack. It was summer on white bread. Number 15. Peanut butter and banana sandwich. The peanut butter and banana sandwich was soft, sweet, and heavy in the hand. Some families mashed the banana into the peanut butter. Some sliced it into rounds. Some grilled the sandwich in butter, especially if they knew the Elvis stories, but the plain version was the real poor man's snack: bread, peanut butter, banana. Food history connects peanut butter and banana sandwiches to American home cooking and to Southern memory, but the appeal does not need a celebrity. It is obvious. Peanut butter brings salt and protein. Banana brings sweetness and softness. Bread holds the whole thing together. This snack was especially useful when bananas were getting too spotted for lunchboxes. A banana that looked tired could still become a sandwich. And if the peanut butter stuck to the roof of your mouth, that was not a flaw. That was how you knew it was doing its job. Now we are entering the sandwich zone, and this is where 1970s pantry food gets personal. A sandwich does not need to be a full lunch. In many homes, a half sandwich was a snack, a bribe, a tide over, a quiet solution between school and supper. White bread was the platform. Peanut butter, mayonnaise, bologna, tomatoes, cheese, chips, and whatever else was around became the map of the house. Number 14. Peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich. This is one of the snacks that sounds wrong until you meet someone who grew up with it. Peanut butter and mayonnaise on white bread was once much more common than it is now, especially in parts of the South. Atlas Obscura traces the pairing to the logic of the Great Depression and the decades after it. Peanut butter brought protein and calories, mayonnaise brought fat and moisture, and white bread made it cheap and easy. By the 1970s, some families still ate it because their parents had eaten it. Food habits travel that way. They do not ask permission from the future. The taste is creamy, salty, tangy, and dense. For modern viewers, it may sound like a dare. For others, it will unlock a kitchen memory so specific they can name the brand of mayonnaise. This is why old snacks matter. Sometimes the weird one is the one somebody loved most. Number 13. Fluffernutter. The Fluffernutter was New England's sweet white bread legend. Peanut butter on one slice, marshmallow fluff on the other. Press them together, and the sandwich became sticky, sweet, salty, and nearly impossible to eat without getting something on your fingers. Marshmallow fluff itself goes back to early 20th century Massachusetts, and the famous Fluffernutter name became tied to advertising in the 1960s. By the 1970s, the sandwich was already part of New England childhood for many families. It was not exactly health food, though generations of children tried not to think about that. It was cheap enough, filling enough, and sweet enough to feel like dessert had been smuggled into lunch. The Fluffernutter also proves that Perman snacks were regional. A child in Massachusetts could grow up thinking this was normal, while a child somewhere else might hear about marshmallow cream on bread and stare in disbelief. Number 12. Bologna roll-ups. Bologna was one of the great working-class lunch meats of the 20th century. It was cheap, round, pink, sliceable, and always seemed to be in the refrigerator. Roll it around a pickle spear, a cheese stick, or just itself, and it became a snack without bread. Some kids folded it into quarters and ate it like a little meat fan. Some bit out eye holes and wore it on their face before eating it, which is disgusting, but historically honest. Bologna sandwiches became common because bologna was accessible and easy. The roll-up was just the snack version. No plate needed. No cooking needed. A slice from the package and the refrigerator door could close again. Today, bologna has a complicated reputation. But for many families, it was not a joke. It was lunch meat that stretched, and sometimes stretching was the whole point. Number 11. Potato chip sandwich. The potato chip sandwich was crunch hiding inside softness. White bread, mayonnaise or butter, a handful of potato chips, and pressure from the palm of your hand until the chips cracked into the bread. Some kids added bologna. Some added cheese. Some ate it plain, because the chips were the filling. Packaged snacks became more and more central to American eating after the 1950s. By the 1970s, chips were not just party food. They were in lunchboxes, TV rooms, and kitchen cabinets. Putting them on bread was not elegant, but it made sense. Bread made the chips feel more filling. Mayonnaise made them stick. The crunch made a plain sandwich exciting. This was the kind of snack adults might pretend not to understand, even though plenty of them made one when nobody was looking. Number 10. Cheese toast. Cheese toast was grilled cheese without the commitment. A slice of bread. A slice of American cheese or a handful of shredded cheddar. Under the broiler, in a toaster oven, or in a skillet if that was what the house had. The cheese softened, bubbled, browned at the edges, and turned one piece of bread into a hot snack. Cheese toast and grilled cheese show up in American cookbooks and lunch culture long before the 1970s. But in the 1970s kitchen, cheese toast was still perfectly at home because it was quick, cheap, and flexible. Some kids ate it plain. Some added tomato. Some added a shake of garlic salt or paprika. Some burned the corners and ate it anyway. It was not dinner, but it smelled like cooking. That mattered. A hot snack could make an empty afternoon feel cared for. Number 9. Stovetop popcorn. Before microwave popcorn became normal in the 1980s, popcorn at home meant a pot, a pan, or one of those foil-top Jiffy Pop pans that swelled like a silver balloon. Popcorn has been one of America's great cheap snacks for a very long time. It became tied to movies because it was inexpensive, aromatic, portable, and profitable. At home, it had a different magic, the sound. First one pop. Then another. Then the whole pot going wild. In a 1970s living room, a bowl of popcorn could feed every kid watching television. Butter was optional. Salt was not. Some families shook it in a brown paper bag. Some used an old pot with a lid that rattled like it was trying to escape. Popcorn was poor man abundance. A small handful of kernels turned into a bowl big enough to share. This is where the list changes again. The snacks are not just bread and peanut butter now. They are becoming part of the supermarket age: branded boxes, cereal recipes, powdered drinks, canned pudding, toaster pastries, and instant noodles. The 1970s kitchen sat between old thrift and modern convenience. That is why the decade tastes so specific. Number 8. Homemade Chex Party Mix. Chex Party Mix was what happened when cereal left breakfast and became a snack bowl. Chex cereal, pretzels, nuts if the family had them, butter, Worcestershire sauce, seasoned salt, garlic powder, and thyme in the oven. The smell filled the house. The pieces came out salty, crisp, and uneven in the best way. Chex as a brand still treats homemade mix as part of family snack culture, and food historians trace Chex Party Mix recipes back to the early 1950s. By the 1970s, it belonged to holidays, card tables, football games, and family rooms. It was not always poor man food if nuts were involved, but it was makeable from the pantry food. Families adjusted it. More cereal, fewer nuts. More pretzels, less butter. A little more seasoning because that was free. The best handful always had the piece that absorbed too much sauce. Number 7. Fritos Chili Pie. Fritos Chili Pie was a snack trying to become supper. Fritos corn chips, chili, maybe cheese, maybe onion, sometimes served right in the bag if the setting was casual enough. Around 1960, recipes using Fritos, including Fritos Chili Pie, were already being promoted as ways to cook with the chips. That makes it more than a random kitchen trick. It was part of how snack companies taught Americans to cook with snack food. For families, the appeal was obvious. Chips brought crunch and salt. Chili brought heat and substance. Cheese made it feel generous. It could feed a kid after school, a teenager after practice, or a family watching television. The dish also showed how the line between snack and meal was getting blurry. In the 1970s, a bag of chips could become an ingredient, and nobody at the table needed a lecture about it. Number 6. Kool-Aid Freezer Pops. This is the powdered drink envelope from the opening. Kool-Aid began in Hastings, Nebraska, in 1927, when Edwin Perkins turned a liquid fruit concentrate into a powder that was easier to ship, store, and sell. During the Depression, the price was cut, and Kool-Aid became an affordable treat many families could still manage. By the 1970s, Kool-Aid was childhood color in a pitcher. But when families poured it into ice cube trays, paper cups, or plastic molds and froze it, it became summer. The freezer pop version was not complicated. Mix the powder, add sugar, add water, freeze, wait. The hardest part was waiting. Some kids ate them with a spoon from a paper cup. Some sucked the color out first and left pale ice behind. It tasted like cherry, grape, orange, and a freezer door opening on a hot day. Number 5. Jell-O cubes. Jell-O cubes were the snack you could cut with a butter knife. Make gelatin in a shallow pan, chill it, cut it into squares, and suddenly dessert became finger food. Red, green, orange, yellow, sometimes with fruit cocktail inside if someone wanted to get ambitious. Gelatin had already been part of American home food for decades, from salads to molds to desserts. Those wobbly dishes settled deeply into 20th century American kitchens. But the cube version was simpler, cheap, cold, sweet, and bright. For kids, the appeal was movement. The cubes wobbled. They slipped. They stained fingers. They could be eaten one at a time until someone noticed half the pan was gone. Jell-O cubes feel forgotten because modern snacks rarely ask for patience. This one required the refrigerator to do its slow work. Number 4. Snack Pack Pudding. This is the pull-tab snack from the opening. Snack Pack goes back to its original 1968 tin can packaging. For kids who remember the 1970s version, that can is half the memory. The metal lid peeled back with a sound that felt dangerous and exciting. Chocolate, vanilla, butterscotch, maybe tapioca, depending on the store and the house. It was ready-to-eat pudding before plastic cups took over. No mixing, no chilling, no bowl. Just a little can and a spoon. In lunchboxes, Snack Pack felt like winning. At home, it was the pantry dessert that did not require anyone to cook. Parents liked the convenience. Kids liked the sweetness. Everyone understood that the chocolate one had better bargaining power. Later packaging changed, and the sharp metal memory faded. But for many 1970s kids, canned pudding still has a sound. Number 3. Rice Krispies Treats. Rice Krispies Treats were homemade candy pretending to be cereal. Melt butter, melt marshmallows, stir in Rice Krispies, press the sticky mass into a pan, and wait just long enough to cut squares. The cereal itself dates to 1928, and campfire history connects Rice Krispies Treats to Campfire Girls fundraising and Kellogg's employee Mildred Day in the late 1930s. By the 1970s, the treat was already a home classic. It was cheap enough for bake sales, simple enough for kids to help with, and forgiving enough that even an uneven batch tasted good. The magic was sound and texture. Snap, crackle, pop in the bowl became chew, stretch, crunch in the hand. A fresh square pulled apart with marshmallow strings. A stale square could threaten a tooth, but people ate it anyway. Rice Krispies Treats were proof that a cereal box could hold more than breakfast. Number 2. Pop-Tarts from the foil. Pop-Tarts were not invented in the 1970s, but the 1970s helped make them feel permanent. Pop-Tarts launched in 1964, expanded nationally soon after, gained toaster-safe frosting in 1967, and by 1973 the brand had grown to many flavors. For kids, the official history did not matter. What mattered was the foil packet. 2 pastries inside. Sometimes toasted. Often not. A careful family might say 1 pastry was enough and the second was for later. A hungry kid knew better. Pop-Tarts were breakfast, snack, dessert, and contraband all at once. They were shelf-stable, sweet, portable, and easy to eat while walking through the house. The brown sugar cinnamon one tasted like permission. Strawberry frosting tasted like Saturday morning television. They were not exactly poor man food, but they were convenience food that stretched across mornings and afternoons. 1 box could make a kid feel rich for a week. Number 1. Top Ramen After School Bowl. This is the early 1970s budget food from the opening. Top Ramen entered the United States in the early 1970s, with U.S. production starting in California in 1972. What began as a Japanese instant noodle innovation became, in America, one of the great cheap pantry meals. For a 1970s kid or teenager, Top Ramen could feel almost futuristic. A brick of noodles. A silver flavor packet. Boiling water. 3 minutes. Suddenly there was a bowl of chicken-flavored noodles on the table. It was more than a snack, but not quite supper unless the family needed it to be. Some kids ate it brothy. Some drained most of the water. Some broke the noodles before cooking. Some learned to add an egg, a hot dog, leftover vegetables, or nothing at all because nothing was the point. Top ramen belongs at number 1 because it captured the whole poor man's snack idea: cheap, fast, filling, shelf-stable, and somehow comforting far beyond its price. Looking back, these snacks can seem too simple. Bread with sugar, crackers with butter, celery with peanut butter, a bowl of popcorn, a packet of noodles, a can of pudding, a toaster pastry eaten cold over the sink. But simple does not mean empty. These foods tell us how American families handled hunger between meals when money, time, and groceries had limits. They tell us what kids could make before anyone trusted them with a stove. They tell us how brand new supermarket convenience met older habits of thrift. They tell us why a person can remember the sound of a pudding can opening, the smell of cinnamon toast, or the way Kool-Aid ice stained a paper cup. The 1970s were not just disco, gas lines, and shag carpet. They were also kitchens where parents stretched groceries and children learned that a snack did not have to be impressive to be loved. And maybe that is why these poor man's snacks still hit so hard. They were not trying to be nostalgic. They were just trying to get somebody through the afternoon. But decades later, one bite can still take a person back to the counter, the cabinet, the bread bag, the cracker box, the television humming in the next room, and a voice saying, "Make yourself something small. Supper is later."